For his fiancée's birthday, Millionaire CEO chose a yacht, never expecting the owner to be the woman he left. Hi, my beautiful family. Welcome back to Mr. Peter's Family, your own family story channel. May the Almighty bless this new year with endless joy, boundless love, and unshakable peace. May every woman in our lives, the sisters, daughters, wives, and friends, be honored, cherished, and empowered. May her heart be strong, her spirit radiant, and her days filled with respect, happiness, and dignity. She is the foundation of every family, the silent strength that carries hope and love through every challenge. May this year bring health to your bodies, clarity to your minds, and warmth to your souls. May every obstacle turn into opportunity, every tear into laughter, and may your homes be filled with harmony and blessings that never end. If your heart is true, like the video, if your love is real, write, "I am with Mr. Peter. Let's start with love." The standing ovation started before David Lyon even reached the podium. Kennedy Fox watched from the front row, her hand resting on her swollen belly, emerald dress catching the chandelier light of the Riverside Hotel ballroom. She was 8 months pregnant and exhausted, but tonight she felt invincible, because the man walking onto that stage, accepting the Rising Architects Under 30 award, was hers. David's eyes found hers before he touched the microphone. That look, the one that made her feel like the only person in any room. "Thank you," David said, his voice carrying over the applause. "But I need to be honest. Every building I design thinking about legacy, about what we leave behind. And next month, when my daughter is born, I'll understand what legacy really means." He gestured to Kennedy. "That woman in the front row, she's the brilliant one. She sees possibilities where I see problems. She's my partner in every sense of the word. Kennedy, this is for us." The applause swelled. Kennedy felt tears threaten her carefully applied makeup. This was everything they'd worked for. Their construction consulting firm, Lyon & Fox Development, was thriving. They had projects lined up, a reputation building, and a baby on the way. Life was clicking into place like a perfectly drafted blueprint. "Mr. Lyon." The voice came from behind her as the crowd dispersed for cocktails. Kennedy turned to see Dexter Hawthorne, David's former professor from architecture school. Silver-haired, distinguished, the kind of man who commanded attention without trying. "Professor Hawthorne," David said, approaching with Kennedy, "I didn't expect to see you here. I keep tabs on my best students." Dexter's smile was warm, but his eyes were calculating. "I wanted to talk to you about an opportunity. Hawthorne and Associates is expanding. We need a junior partner with fresh perspectives." Kennedy felt David's hand tense against her back. "That's generous, but Kennedy and I have our own firm. We're building something together." "Of course, but consider this. What you're building could grow exponentially with the right backing. We're talking access to major commercial projects, established client relationships, resources your startup simply can't match." Dexter handed David a card. "Just think about it. No pressure." As Dexter walked away, Kennedy studied David's face. She'd known him long enough to read the micro-expressions, the flicker of interest he tried to hide, the calculation happening behind his eyes. "You're thinking about it," she said quietly. "I'm not. David, I know you. I see it." Kennedy took his hand. "If it's something you want to explore, we can talk about it. We're partners. We make these decisions together. It's not what I want. You and the baby and what we're building, that's what I want." Kennedy wanted to believe him, but she'd caught something in his hesitation, something she'd never felt before, the first hairline crack in their foundation. Later that night, in their apartment overlooking the harbor, Kennedy found David at his drafting table staring at nothing. "Can't sleep?" she asked, lowering herself carefully into the chair beside him. "Just thinking about the future, about providing for you and the baby, about whether what we have is enough." "It's always been enough before. Before, it was just us." Now there's a tiny human depending on us to get this right." David turned to her, and in the dim light, he looked younger than his years, scared. "What if I can't give you everything you deserve?" "You already do. We're doing this together, remember? Lion and fox, equal partners." David pulled her close, kissed her forehead. "You're right. I'm just anxious about the baby." Kennedy chose to believe him. 3 weeks later, on a Tuesday morning, Kennedy's water broke while she was making breakfast. The contractions came fast. Too fast. They barely made it to the car before she knew they wouldn't make it to the hospital. "David, pull over, now." "We're almost there." "David!" The contraction made her scream. "Pull over, or you're delivering this baby while driving." He swerved into an empty parking lot. Kennedy climbed into the back seat, and David called emergency services with shaking hands. "They're 10 minutes out," he said, climbing back with her. "Can you hold on?" "No." Kennedy gripped his arm. "You're going to deliver this baby, right now." For a moment, she saw pure terror in his eyes. Then something shifted. That same determination she'd seen when he tackled impossible projects, when he refused to give up on difficult designs. Okay, we can do this. Tell me what you need." Kennedy talked him through it between contractions, her voice steady even as her body felt like it was breaking apart. And when Claudia finally emerged into David's waiting hands, tiny, perfect, screaming, Kennedy watched something fundamental change in his eyes. "She's here," David whispered, tears streaming down his face as he placed their daughter on Kennedy's chest. "We made her." Paramedics arrived minutes later, but it didn't matter. They'd already done the impossible part together. At the hospital, cleaned up and checked over, Kennedy held their sleeping daughter while David sat beside the bed, unable to look away. "I've never been this scared," he admitted, "or this happy, or this terrified that I'll somehow mess it up. We'll mess it up together. That's what partners do." Kennedy reached for his hand. "I love you. I love you both. More than anything." David kissed her, then pressed his lips to Claudia's tiny head. "My whole world right here." Kennedy believed him completely. She shouldn't have. The contract appeared a week later. Kennedy found it while searching for documents in David's home office. Hawthorne and Associates, junior partnership agreement. The salary alone made her breath catch. David walked in, saw her holding the papers, and stopped in the doorway. "When did this arrive?" Kennedy asked, her voice carefully neutral. "A few days ago. And you didn't mention it." "Because I'm not taking it." David crossed to her, took the contract. "I told Dexter no. This is just the formal offer I need to officially decline." Kennedy looked at the unsigned signature line. "You haven't declined it yet." "I will, today." "Kennedy, I promise." "Don't promise, just tell me the truth. Do you want this?" The pause before he answered told her everything. "It doesn't matter what I want. We have a plan. Lion and fox. That's our future." "But if you could have both? If there was a way to take the partnership and still build our firm?" David's face showed relief that she'd offered the out. "Dexter suggested I could work at Hawthorne temporarily. 6 months, maybe a year. Build capital, make connections, then transition back to our firm with resources we don't currently have." Kennedy felt something cold settle in her chest. "And you believe that? That you could take a junior partnership and just walk away after 6 months?" "Why not?" "Because partnerships don't work that way. They'll own you, David. Your time, your energy, your loyalty. There won't be anything left for us. You don't know that. I do, because I've watched people get consumed by places like Hawthorne. They always promise it's temporary. It never is." David set the contract down, took her hands. "What if I promised you it would be different? What if I committed to keeping our firm alive while I do this?" Kennedy looked at their sleeping daughter in the bassinet, then back at David. She could see the hunger in his eyes, for recognition, for validation from the most prestigious firm in the city. And she knew, in that moment, that she'd already lost this argument. "Okay," she said quietly, "but not 6 months. 3. That's all I'm willing to sacrifice. 3 months. I swear." David kissed her with something like desperation. "Thank you for believing in me." Kennedy said nothing, because she wasn't sure she did believe in him anymore. David started at Hawthorne and Associates the following Monday. He came home that first night energized, talking about the projects, the resources, the opportunities. Kennedy listened while feeding Claudia and tried to ignore the sinking feeling in her gut. The 3 months came and went. David asked for an extension, then another. Kennedy stopped asking when he'd leave because she already knew the answer. He wasn't coming back to Lion and Fox. He'd made his choice, and Kennedy was left alone, with a newborn daughter and a dying dream, wondering when exactly she'd become something he could walk away from. Chapter 2. The Fracture. Jalen Ashford appeared in their lives like smoke through a doorway, subtle at first, then impossible to ignore. Kennedy met her at a Hawthorne and Associates holiday party 6 months after David started. The firm had insisted spouses attend, and Kennedy had reluctantly left Claudia with her mother for the evening. "You must be Kennedy." The woman who approached was stunning in an effortless way, blonde, mid-20s, wearing a black dress that probably cost more than Kennedy's mortgage payment. "I'm Jalen Ashford. I work in acquisitions. David and I have been collaborating on the Riverside project." Something in the way she said "collaborating" made Kennedy's stomach tighten. "He's mentioned the project, never mentioned you." Jalen's smile didn't falter. "We keep late hours. I'm sure it all blurs together for him, but he's brilliant. You must be so proud of what he's building here. What we built was our own firm. This is just temporary." "Of course." Jalen's tone suggested she didn't believe that at all. "Well, I hope we can be friends. David speaks very highly of you." She drifted away into the crowd, and Kennedy watched her immediately find David, touch his arm, lean in close to whisper something that made him laugh. Kennedy went home early, claiming exhaustion. David didn't argue. The late nights started shortly after. David would text, "Client emergency, presentation deadline, Dexter needs this by morning," and Kennedy would eat dinner alone, put Claudia to bed alone, fall asleep alone. When he did come home, he smelled of perfume that wasn't hers. Expensive, floral, distinctive. "Jaylene wears strong perfume," Kennedy said one night, her voice casual as David changed out of his suit. "You reek of it." "We shared a car from a client dinner. She's Dexter's daughter, so we end up working together constantly." Dexter's daughter. Kennedy filed that information away. Convenient. "Kennedy, are you seriously starting this?" "Starting what?" "Noticing that my boyfriend comes home at midnight smelling like another woman. Observing that you work late with her more than you're home with your daughter." "I'm providing for our family." "You're building someone else's empire while ours dies. Lion and Fox has had 2 inquiries this month. 2, because I'm doing this alone while you pretend you're still just temporarily gone." David sat on the bed, exhausted. "What do you want me to do?" "I want you to come back, like you promised." 3 months, David. It's been 8. "I can't just walk away from a junior partnership." "Yes, you can. You just don't want to." Kennedy stood, picked up Claudia from her crib. Their daughter was teething, fussy, and Kennedy was so tired she felt hollowed out. "I need to know if we're still partners, or if you've already chosen them over us." "That's not fair." "None of this is fair, but I need an answer, David. Are you coming back to Lion and Fox? Are you going to be present for your daughter? Or are you building a life without us?" David looked at her, looked at Claudia, and said nothing. The silence was answer enough. Their anniversary fell on a Thursday evening. Kennedy made reservations at the restaurant where David had first told her he loved her. She bought a new dress, left Claudia with her mother, showed up at 7 expecting him to meet her. By 8, she'd ordered appetizers to justify taking up the table. By 9, she'd given up and gone home. David came in around midnight, tie loosened, clearly having had drinks. Kennedy was sitting in the dark living room, still in her dress. "Kennedy, God, I'm so sorry. There was this emergency presentation and I completely... Our anniversary." The words stopped him cold. "Oh God, Kennedy, I'm so sorry. I lost track of time." "You forgot." Kennedy's voice was terrifyingly calm. "You forgot the anniversary of the day we decided to build a life together because you were with her." "It wasn't like that." "Then what was it like, David? Because from where I'm sitting, you're spending more time with Jalen Ashford than with me and Claudia combined. You come home smelling like her perfume. You work late with her constantly. You forgot our anniversary because you were with her. The whole team was there. I don't care if the entire firm was there." Kennedy stood, and David stepped back from the fury in her eyes. "You chose them. You chose that partnership and that woman and that life over us, and you didn't even have the decency to make it a hard choice. You just drifted away while I held everything together. I'm trying to build a future for us. You're building a future without us, can't you see that?" Kennedy's voice cracked. "I'm raising our daughter alone. I'm watching our firm die. I'm sleeping in an empty bed. You're already gone, David. You just haven't moved out yet." David reached for her. Kennedy stepped back. "Don't touch me, not when you smell like her." "Kennedy, please. I'm sleeping in the guest room. Don't follow me." She closed the door on his protests and cried into her pillow so he wouldn't hear. The phone bill arrived 3 days later. Kennedy wasn't snooping. She was managing their finances because David was too busy to pay attention to mundane things like bills, but she looked anyway. Hundreds of texts to a single number, at all hours, during dinner time, during Claudia's bedtime, during what should have been their time. Kennedy cross-referenced the number with David's contacts. Jalen. Most texts were work-related, project updates, client notes, meeting schedules. But there, buried in the middle of a Wednesday afternoon, "Last night felt different. When are you going to tell her?" Kennedy read it 3 times, each time feeling more of herself break apart. When David came home that evening, early for once, Kennedy had bags packed by the door. Claudia was sleeping in her carrier. "What's going on?" David asked, staring at the luggage. Kennedy held up the phone bill. "You're sleeping with her." All the color drained from his face. "I'm not." "Kennedy, it's not what you think." "Then explain last night felt different. Explain, when are you going to tell her? Explain hundreds of texts at hours when you should have been present with your family." "We kissed. Once. After drinks with the team. I immediately told her it was a mistake." "You kissed her?" Kennedy's voice was ice. "You kissed another woman while I've been home raising your daughter and trying to keep our dream alive. It didn't mean anything. It means everything, because you chose her, David. Maybe not consciously, maybe not all at once. But text by text, late night by late night, you chose her over us." Kennedy picked up Claudia's carrier. "I'm leaving. I'm taking Claudia to my mother's, and you need to decide what you actually want, us or that life at Hawthorne with Jalen waiting in the wings." "Kennedy, please don't do this." "I'm not doing anything. You did this. You walked away from us months ago. I'm just making it official." She walked to the door. "Kennedy, wait. I love you. If you loved me, you would have come home. If you loved Claudia, you would have been her father instead of a stranger who pays rent." Kennedy turned back, and David saw something dead in her eyes. "Choose, right now, our family or that partnership and everything that comes with it. But you don't get both." She watched him struggle, saw him open his mouth, close it, look at his sleeping daughter, look back at Kennedy with something like panic. "I need time to think about what's best." "No!" Kennedy's voice cut through his words like a blade. You need time to figure out how to leave without feeling guilty. There's a difference. She walked out of their apartment, out of their life, and David didn't follow. He didn't call that night, or the next day, or the day after that. Kennedy learned that silence could be more devastating than any words, because his silence told her everything she needed to know about where she ranked in his priorities. 3 days later, a lawyer's letter arrived at her mother's apartment. David was offering child support, generous child support, and a parenting plan that gave him visitation rights. But he never asked her to come home, never asked to work on their relationship, never fought for them at all. 2 months after that, Kennedy saw the engagement announcement in the business section: David Lyon and Jalen Ashford to wed. She read it while Claudia napped in her mother's spare bedroom and felt the last piece of her heart turn to stone. Chapter 3. The Empire. Kennedy's mother Diane found her sitting in the dark that night, the engagement announcement still in her hand. "Baby girl, you need to eat something." "I don't want food. I want to understand how someone I loved, someone who claimed to love me, could move on that fast." "Men like that don't move on. They move forward because backward requires accountability." Diane sat beside her daughter. "He's marrying her because she's easy. You were real. Real is terrifying." "Real is what I thought we had." "You did have it. Then he chose easy over real. That's his loss, not yours." Kennedy looked at her sleeping daughter. "How do I do this alone, Mama? How do I build a life when everything I planned is gone?" "Same way I did when your father left. One day at a time, one decision at a time, one moment of refusing to quit at a time." Diane took Kennedy's hands. "You're stronger than you know, and that baby girl needs you to show her what strength looks like." So Kennedy showed her. She finished her MBA while working 3 jobs, took classes online during Claudia's naps, studied at her mother's kitchen table until dawn, graduated at the top of her class 8 months after David left. The day she walked across that stage to receive her diploma, Claudia was in the audience with Diane, clapping her tiny hands, and Kennedy felt something fierce ignite in her chest. She didn't need David to build a future. She'd build one herself. Kennedy's grandfather had been a ship captain, spent 40 years on the water before retiring to restore boats. She'd grown up spending summers with him, learning maritime systems and navigation, listening to his stories about crossing oceans. When he died during her college years, he'd left her money, not a fortune, but enough for emergencies. This was an emergency. Kennedy took her inheritance, her savings, every penny she'd scraped together, and bought a derelict yacht at a marina auction. The auctioneer laughed when she bid on it. "That boat hasn't run in 5 years. You know what you're getting into?" "I know exactly what I'm getting into." She moved the yacht to a cheap slip and got to work. Claudia would sit in her stroller, playing with toys, while Kennedy sanded wood and rewired electrical systems. Other boat owners would stop and stare. This young black woman with a toddler, rebuilding a yacht by hand. "You're wasting your time," an old sailor told her one afternoon. "That boat's too far gone." Kennedy looked at him, covered in sawdust and grease, exhausted but determined. "I've rebuilt myself from worse. I can rebuild anything." It took 18 months. The yacht, she named it the Diane after her mother, was beautiful when she finished. Not fancy, not new, but seaworthy, functional, hers. Kennedy's first charter was a corporate retreat. She charged reasonable rates, provided exceptional service, and asked every client for referrals. Word spread. Within a year, she'd saved enough to buy a second yacht. Within 2 years, she had 4. By the time Claudia started kindergarten, Fox Luxury Charters owned 7 vessels and had a waiting list for prime dates. "Mama, why do we work so much?" Claudia asked one morning while Kennedy prepared for a charter departure. Kennedy knelt down to her daughter's level. "Because we're building something that belongs to us, something nobody can take away. You understand? Because Daddy took things away?" The question hit Kennedy like a physical blow. Who told you about your daddy? Nobody. I just know he's not here, and you work really hard so we don't need him. Kennedy pulled her daughter close. Baby, I work hard because I want you to see that women can build empires. That being left doesn't mean you're broken. It means you're free to become something extraordinary. Are we extraordinary, Mama? We're getting there, baby. We're definitely getting there. By Claudia's 8th birthday, Fox Luxury Charters operated 16 yachts out of Newport, Rhode Island. Kennedy had relocated there for the elite clientele, the superior marina facilities, the proximity to major markets. Forbes called her the Maritime Queen in a feature article. The journalist had been fascinated by Kennedy's story. Single mother, started with one wrecked boat, now ran a multi-million-dollar operation. The article included photos of Kennedy on her flagship yacht with Claudia beside her. Both of them powerful, successful, whole. Kennedy's phone exploded with interview requests and partnership offers. She accepted the ones that made business sense, declined everything else, and kept building. Claudia grew into a brilliant child, top of her class, obsessed with marine biology, already talking about becoming a naval architect. She asked about her father occasionally, but less as the years passed. Do you think he ever thinks about us? Claudia asked once, around age 7, while they watched dolphins from the deck of their newest yacht. I don't know, baby. Maybe. But what matters is that we think about each other. We're a team. The best team, Claudia agreed. Kennedy dated sporadically. There was Tyler, a lawyer who was kind but ultimately wanted someone less driven. Simone, her operations director, set her up with her brother Marcus, but the chemistry wasn't there. A few others who faded away when they realized Kennedy had no interest in making herself smaller to fit someone else's expectations. Then Grayson Mitchell appeared at a charity gala, surgeon, handsome, easy smile. He asked her to dance, made her laugh, and didn't seem intimidated by her success. They dated for months before he proposed. Kennedy stood in his beautiful home, looking at the ring, and felt nothing. Not excitement, not joy, just a vague awareness that this was what she was supposed to want. Can I think about it? She asked. Of course. Take all the time you need. The ring sat in Kennedy's jewelry box for a month, unworn, while she tried to figure out why she couldn't say yes to a man who checked every box. Then her operations director walked into her office with a booking request, and Kennedy's carefully constructed world tilted on its axis. We got the Sterling Duchess for a 3-day charter, Simone said. Premium client, platinum package. Kennedy barely looked up from her laptop. Approved. Standard service protocol. Client name? David Lyon. The coffee mug in Kennedy's hand slipped, shattered against her desk. Hot liquid spread across contracts she'd been reviewing. Simone jumped back. Kennedy, are you— Get out! Kennedy's voice was barely audible. I need a minute. Just get out. Simone left quickly, and Kennedy sat in her office surrounded by broken ceramic and spilled coffee, and felt 8 years of carefully constructed armor crack apart. David was coming to her yacht. David, who'd chosen Jalen and Hawthorne, and that life over her and Claudia. David, who'd married another woman months after destroying their family. David, who'd paid child support but never once showed up for his daughter. Kennedy's hands shook as she cleaned up the mess, as she reviewed the booking contract, as she saw the occasion listed, birthday charter for Jalen Lyon. He was bringing his wife to Kennedy's yacht for her birthday. The audacity was almost impressive. Kennedy could cancel the booking, make up an excuse, refund the deposit, avoid the confrontation entirely. But then she looked at the photo on her desk. Claudia on the deck of the Diane, tools in hand, helping Kennedy rebuild that first yacht, and felt something harden in her chest. Let him come. Let him see what she'd built from the ashes of what he'd destroyed. Let him look at the empire she'd created alone and know exactly what he'd thrown away. Kennedy called Simone back. Confirm the booking. Tell them I'll personally welcome them aboard for the champagne service. Are you sure that's... I'm sure. And Simone? Make sure our service is flawless. I want them to see exactly what excellence looks like. She had 2 days to prepare for the collision she'd been avoiding for 8 years. 2 days to build armor strong enough to survive seeing the man she'd loved standing beside the woman who'd taken her place. 2 days to prove to herself, and to David, that she'd not just survived his leaving, she'd fucking thrived. Chapter 4. The Collision. Kennedy stood on the deck of the Sterling Duchess wearing white linen and dark sunglasses that hid eyes that hadn't slept in 2 nights. Claudia was beside her, tablet in hand, oblivious that the man boarding in 30 minutes was her father. "Mama, why are you so tense?" Claudia asked, looking up from her game. "Just want everything perfect for these clients." "You always want everything perfect, but you're different today, scared different." Kennedy knelt down to her daughter's level. "Baby, these clients, one of them is someone I used to know, someone who hurt me a long time ago. I just need you to stay close to Captain Morris if I need space, okay?" "Okay." Claudia studied her mother's face. "Are you going to be mean to them?" "I'm going to be professional. There's a difference." "Good. Because Grandma Diane says being mean makes you small. Being powerful makes them small." Kennedy pulled her daughter close. "Your grandma is a very smart woman." The group arrived precisely on time. Kennedy watched from the upper deck as they boarded. David first, expensive suit, grey at the temples now. Then a blonde woman dripping in designer labels. An older couple who had to be her parents. A younger man with the same features as the blonde, her brother probably, and a suited man carrying a briefcase who screamed corporate lawyer. Her crew greeted them with practiced hospitality. Kennedy descended the stairs slowly, each step measured, each breath controlled. David saw her first. The shock that crossed his face was almost worth the pain of seeing him. Kennedy removed her sunglasses. "Welcome aboard the Sterling Duchess. I'm Kennedy Fox, owner of Fox Luxury Charters." Jalen stepped forward, smile bright and oblivious. "How wonderful that the owner does personal greetings. I'm Jalen Lyon. This is my husband, David." "I know who he is." Kennedy's voice could have frozen oceans. "We have history." Jalen's smile faltered. Her mother, patrician features, expensive jewelry, looked between them with sudden interest. "History?" Jalen's voice went sharp. "We lived together, built a business together, had a child together." Kennedy gestured to Claudia, who'd appeared at the railing. "Then he left us for a partnership at Hawthorne and Associates. About the same time, he started spending late nights with you, Mrs. Lyon." The silence was deafening. David's face had gone white. "Kennedy, I didn't know you owned this charter company." "Obviously, or you wouldn't have booked my yacht for your wife's birthday. That level of obliviousness is impressive even for you." Jalen's brother Penn started laughing, then stopped when no one else did. The older man, Jalen's father Richard, stepped forward. "Young woman, I don't appreciate your tone. And I don't appreciate your daughter home-wrecking my relationship and then showing up on my yacht expecting champagne service. But we don't always get what we want, do we?" Kennedy turned to her crew. "Show our guests to their staterooms. Standard platinum welcome package. I'll be in the owner's suite if there are any issues." "Kennedy, please, can we talk?" David moved toward her. "Your contract is binding and paid in full. You'll receive excellent service for 3 days. But we have nothing to talk about, Mr. Lyon. Enjoy your charter." Kennedy walked away before he could see her hands shaking. In the owner's suite, she locked the door and let herself break, just for 5 minutes. Long enough to remember every late night she'd waited for him, every morning she'd woken up alone, every time Claudia had asked about her father. Then she washed her face, reapplied lipstick, and went back to running her empire. Claudia found her in the upper lounge an hour later. "Mama, who is that man?" Kennedy's heart stopped. "Which man, baby?" "The birthday lady's husband." He keeps staring at me. It's weird. Kennedy pulled her daughter close. That's your father. Claudia was quiet for a long moment. The one who left? Yes. He looks sad. That's not our problem to fix. Kennedy tilted Claudia's face up. Baby, listen to me. You don't have to talk to him if you don't want to. You don't owe him anything. This is your choice. Does he want to talk to me? I don't know. But if he tries, you come find me first, okay? Okay. Claudia paused. Is the blonde lady why he left? Kennedy couldn't lie to her daughter. Partially. But baby, he made his own choices. She didn't force him to leave us. He chose to. Then I don't want to talk to him. If he didn't choose us, why should I choose him? Kennedy had never been more proud of her daughter. The dinner service that night was flawless. Kennedy's chef prepared a 7-course tasting menu that had Jalen's mother, Patricia, actually complimenting the food. But Jalen herself was miserable, drinking too much wine, snapping at the crew. Kennedy watched from the upper deck, saw David barely touching his food, saw him watching every door like he was hoping she'd appear. She didn't. But late that night, after everyone was supposedly asleep, Kennedy went to the observation deck for air and found David already there. You shouldn't be here, she said without looking at him. Guest quarters are below. I couldn't sleep. Kept thinking about what you said. About history. We don't have history, David. You do. I have a present and a future. You're just someone who used to be in my past. Kennedy, I made a mistake. Multiple mistakes. But let's not quantify them. Kennedy finally turned to him. Why are you really here? Why book this yacht when you knew it might be mine? I didn't know. I swear I didn't know you owned it until we boarded and you were standing there like everything I'd lost come to life. You didn't lose me. You threw me away. There's a difference. I know. God, Kennedy, I know. David ran his hands through his hair. Can I ask about Claudia? Is she okay? She's extraordinary. Top of her class in everything, reads at a level 3 years ahead, wants to be a marine biologist. She's kind and fierce and smarter than both of us combined. Kennedy's voice hardened. And you know none of this because you chose not to. I paid child support. Money isn't presents. Money isn't showing up for school plays. Money isn't teaching her to ride a bike or comforting her when she has nightmares. You paid to feel less guilty. That's all. David flinched like she'd struck him. You're right. You're absolutely right. Can I see her? Talk to her? No. You lost that right when you married another woman months after abandoning her. You don't get to walk back into her life because it's convenient. Kennedy, please, go back to your wife, David. Go back to your cabin and your birthday charter and your life that doesn't include us, because we've built something without you, and we don't need you to complete it. She left him standing on the deck and didn't look back. In her suite, Kennedy found Claudia awake, reading by flashlight. Can't sleep either? Kennedy asked. I heard you talking to him. Through the vent. Claudia set down her book. You were really brave, Mama. Sometimes being brave just means not crying until later. Do you want to cry now? Kennedy climbed into bed with her daughter. Little bit. Is that okay? It's okay. I'll keep you safe while you do. So Kennedy let herself cry while her 9-year-old daughter held her and thought about how childhood should never include this role reversal, but was grateful for Claudia's strength anyway. Tomorrow they had 2 more days of this charter, 2 more days of David's presence and Jalen's resentment, and the constant reminder of what she'd lost. But Kennedy had survived worse. She'd survived being abandoned while raising a baby alone. She'd survived building an empire from nothing while everyone told her she'd fail. She could survive 3 days on a yacht with the man who'd destroyed her. She just wasn't sure if he could survive 3 days watching what he'd thrown away. Chapter 5. The Unraveling Begins. Jalen was unraveling by morning. Kennedy heard about it from Samuel, her head steward, during the breakfast service briefing. Mrs. Lyon called the coffee undrinkable, sent back the omelette twice and told me I was incompetent, Samuel reported, his usual unflappable demeanor showing cracks. She's been drinking since 7 a.m. Document everything, timestamps, witnesses, exact words. Kennedy reviewed the day's schedule. We maintain perfect service regardless, don't give her ammunition. What Kennedy didn't anticipate was Claudia's collision with the situation. Her daughter had gone to the forward deck to sketch. She'd developed an interest in drawing boats, and David had apparently found her there. Kennedy learned about it when Claudia appeared in the galley, face pale. "Mama, he tried to talk to me." Kennedy's hands stilled on the manifest she'd been reviewing. "What did he say?" "He asked what I was drawing. Said I looked like I was concentrating hard, like he used to when he was my age." Claudia's voice was small. "Then he asked if I knew who he was." "What did you tell him?" "I said you told me he was my father, the one who left." Claudia looked up with those serious eyes. "He started crying, Mama. Like actually crying. It was weird." Kennedy's chest tightened. "Did he say anything else?" "He said he was sorry, that he made terrible choices, that seeing me was the best and worst thing that's happened to him in years." Claudia paused. "I told him sorry doesn't fix things, that Grandma Diane says actions matter more than words. Then I left." Kennedy pulled her daughter close. "You did perfect, baby. I'm proud of you. I didn't want to be mean, but I also didn't want to pretend it's okay that he wasn't there. You don't have to pretend anything. Your feelings are valid, whatever they are." But the encounter had rattled both of them. Kennedy could see it in Claudia's quietness, in the way she stayed closer than usual, in the protective way she watched Kennedy interact with the guests. The situation escalated at lunch. Jaylin had clearly decided that attacking Kennedy's staff was insufficient. She wanted to go for Kennedy directly. Kennedy was doing a courtesy check of the dining setup when Jaylin cornered her away from the other guests. "I know what you're doing," Jaylin said, words slightly slurred from morning drinking. "Parading around, playing the victim, making David feel guilty." "I'm operating my business. Your emotional response to that isn't my concern." "He told me about her, the daughter. He said she looks just like him. She has his eyes, my strength. She's perfect." "Must be nice." Jaylin's voice dripped with something ugly, using a child as leverage, making him feel obligated to a mistake from his past. Kennedy set down the water pitcher she'd been holding with careful control. "My daughter is not a mistake. She's not leverage. She's a child whose father abandoned her, and if David feels guilty about that, it's because he should. He had to leave you. You were holding him back. I was building something with him. He chose to tear it down." Kennedy stepped closer. "And you? You saw a man with a partner and a child and decided you wanted him anyway. You didn't steal him, Jaylin. You're just what was available when he decided ambition mattered more than family. Don't confuse being convenient with being chosen." Jaylin's hand moved fast. Kennedy saw it coming, but let it happen. Let Jaylin's palm connect with her cheek. Let the sound echo across the deck. 3 crew members witnessed it. David had just come up the stairs and stood frozen at the sight. Kennedy didn't touch her reddening cheek, didn't react at all, just looked at Jaylin with something approaching pity. "Samuel, note the time. Mrs. Lyon just committed assault on the owner. We have cameras." Kennedy's voice was unnaturally calm. "Mrs. Lyon, you're confined to your stateroom for the remainder of the charter. If you refuse, we'll return to port immediately, and you'll be escorted off by security. Those are your options." "You can't." "I absolutely can. This is my vessel, my rules. You crossed a line." Kennedy turned to David. "Get your wife under control, or get her off my yacht." She walked away, head high, while behind her Jaylin dissolved into furious tears, and David stood there looking like his world was collapsing. In her suite, Kennedy finally allowed herself to shake, not from the slap she'd endured worse building this empire, but from the cumulative weight of 2 days of confronting her past while maintaining her composure. Her radio crackled. Captain Morris. Kennedy, David Lyon is asking to speak with you, says it's urgent. Tell him no, I'm done having conversations with ghosts. She spent the rest of the afternoon in her suite, answering emails and reviewing contracts, while her crew handled the escalating drama with the Lions. According to reports, David and Jalen were having explosive arguments. Richard Montgomery was threatening legal action, and Penn was drunk and finding everything hilarious. Just one more day of this nightmare charter, and they'd be done. But evening brought an unexpected visitor. Dexter Hawthorne knocked on her suite door. Kennedy considered not answering, but curiosity won. Mr. Hawthorne decided to abandon the sinking ship. May I come in? What I need to say shouldn't be overheard. Kennedy let him enter, maintained distance. You have 5 minutes. I owe you an apology, a significant one. Dexter looked older than his years, tired. When David came to work for me, I knew about you, about your child, about the life he was leaving behind. And you hired him anyway. Worse, I encouraged him to take the partnership knowing it would destroy his relationship with you, because Jalen had asked me to offer it to him specifically. Kennedy's blood went cold. Explain. My daughter saw David at an architecture conference you both attended. She decided she wanted him. Not his designs, not his expertise, him. She asked me to offer him the partnership to get him away from you. Dexter's voice was heavy with shame. I went along with it because she's my daughter, and I wanted to make her happy. I didn't think about the collateral damage, about you or your child. So he was manipulated. Kennedy processed this. That doesn't absolve him of choosing to stay. No, it doesn't. He still made every choice after that initial offer, still chose to let Jalen get close, still chose to walk away from you. Dexter met her eyes. But I wanted you to know that the initial seduction was calculated, planned, executed by my daughter with my help. Why tell me this now? Because I've watched David for 8 years become a shell of who he was. Watched my daughter trap him in a loveless marriage. Watched the spark that made him brilliant die. Dexter pulled an envelope from his jacket. And because I watched you this weekend, watched the empire you built, the daughter you raised, the strength you possess, and realized I helped destroy something extraordinary. He handed her the envelope. Inside was a check for an amount that made Kennedy's breath catch. That's the charter fee plus 50%. Consider it an asshole tax. And an apology that can never be adequate but is at least tangible. Kennedy tucked the check away. Your daughter assaulted me on camera. I could press charges. You could, and you'd be within your rights. I won't, because she's not worth the energy. But if she ever comes near me or my daughter again, I will end her. Legally, financially, socially. I have resources now. I'm not afraid to deploy them. Understood. Dexter moved toward the door, paused. For what it's worth, I don't think David ever deserved you. But I think he knows it, and I think it's destroyed him. After he left, Kennedy sat with that information, trying to decide if David being manipulated changed anything. It didn't. He'd still chosen to kiss Jalen, chosen to prioritize the partnership, chosen to leave Kennedy and Claudia, chosen not to fight for them. Being manipulated into the initial opportunity didn't erase the hundreds of choices he'd made afterward. That night, their last night on the charter, Kennedy found David alone on the deck again. I heard about Dexter's confession, Kennedy said without preamble, about how Jalen orchestrated the partnership offer. David turned, hope flickering in his eyes. Does that change anything? Knowing I was set up? No, because you still chose her. Every day for months you chose her over me. Being manipulated into meeting her doesn't excuse sleeping with her, doesn't excuse abandoning your daughter, doesn't excuse any of it. I know. You're right. David's voice was hollow. I just wanted you to know I didn't plan any of this. Didn't wake up one day and decide to destroy my family. Neither did I. But I'm the one who had to rebuild from the destruction. Kennedy looked out at the dark water. Tomorrow we dock. You'll disembark, and we'll go back to our separate lives. This weekend was an accident, David. Nothing more. What about Claudia? Can I be part of her life somehow? Kennedy was quiet for a long moment. That's not my decision alone. But if you want to try, you need to prove you've changed. Therapy, consistent effort, showing up even when it's hard. And even then, it's her choice whether she wants you in her life. You don't get to demand access to the daughter you abandoned. I'll do whatever it takes. We'll see. People say that a lot. They rarely mean it. Kennedy left him there and went to bed, exhausted and ready for this nightmare to end. Tomorrow, they'd dock. Tomorrow, this would be over. Tomorrow, she could start forgetting this weekend ever happened. Except she knew, lying in the dark, that some things couldn't be forgotten. Some wounds, even when healed, left scars that ached when the weather changed. And David Lyon was a storm she'd never fully weathered. Chapter 6. The Truth Bomb. The Sterling Duchess docked at 7 a.m. Most of the Lyon party had already arranged water taxis back to shore, apparently unable to tolerate one more moment on Kennedy's yacht. But David had stayed, and now he stood on the dock, suitcase beside him, looking up at Kennedy like she was something precious he'd dropped and broken. "Thank you," he said, "for 3 days of perfect service despite everything. It's what I do, run a professional operation regardless of personal feelings. Kennedy, I need to ask something before I leave." David's voice was urgent. "I'm filing for divorce from Jalen. Already started the paperwork. Would that change anything? If I left her?" Kennedy felt nothing. "You're leaving her because your marriage is miserable, not because you suddenly remembered you have a daughter. So no, David, it changes nothing. But what if I proved I'd changed? What if I showed up for Claudia consistently for months? Would you consider what? Taking you back? Letting you play happy family after 8 years of abandonment?" Kennedy laughed, sharp and bitter. "I'm engaged, David, to a surgeon named Grayson Mitchell. He's kind, present, and has never left me standing alone with a baby while he built someone else's empire." The lie came easily. Kennedy wore Grayson's ring now, had put it on this morning specifically for this moment. To have armor, to show David she'd moved on, even if she still hadn't actually said yes. David looked at the ring like it was a weapon pointed at his chest. "You're getting married?" "Yes, to a man who chooses me every day. Imagine that." "Kennedy." "Goodbye, David. I hope your divorce is less painful than your marriage clearly was." She walked away, leaving him standing on the dock, and felt nothing but relief that this was finally over. Except it wasn't over. Because 2 weeks later, Dexter Hawthorne called her office. "Ms. Fox, I need to warn you about something. Jalen is planning legal action against you." Kennedy's stomach sank. "For what?" "She's claiming intentional infliction of emotional distress, alienation of affection. She's arguing you deliberately accepted the booking knowing it would destroy her marriage and humiliate her publicly." "That's insane. I didn't even know they'd booked until after the deposit cleared." "I know, and I'll testify to that if necessary, but Ms. Fox, you should also know, Jalen has partnered with Ryland Cross." The name made Kennedy go cold. Ryland Cross owned the largest yacht charter operation on the East Coast. He'd been trying to buy her out for 2 years, and she'd refused every offer. "Why would Cross partner with your daughter?" Because you have something they both want destroyed. Jaylin wants revenge. Cross wants your business. Dexter's voice was grave. They're funding each other's legal battles, and Cross just bought the Newport Marina properties where all your yachts are moored. Kennedy's mind raced through implications. He controls our moorage. Yes, and he's filed notice to increase fees by a factor of 10, citing necessary facility improvements. That will cost me more than I make in charter revenue. Which is exactly his plan. Force you to relocate or go bankrupt. He's giving you 60 days' notice. After the call ended, Kennedy sat in her office staring at the empire she'd built and felt it teetering on the edge of collapse. She had 60 days to relocate 16 yachts or watch everything she'd built crumble. Her phone rang. David. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. I heard about Cross, he said without preamble. Kennedy, I can help. I have contacts in Baltimore from my architecture days, commercial marina developers who might have space. Why would you help me? Because watching you lose everything would destroy me, and because I owe you more than I can ever repay. David's voice was steady. Let me make some calls, see what I can find. No strings, no expectations, just let me help. Kennedy wanted to refuse, wanted to tell him she didn't need anything from him, but she also had 60 days to save her empire, and pride was a luxury she couldn't afford right now. Make the calls, she said. Report back tomorrow. She hung up before she could change her mind. That evening, Kennedy sat Claudia down at their kitchen table. Baby, we need to talk about something. Some business problems Mama's dealing with. Claudia set down her homework. Are we losing the boats? Not if I can help it, but we might need to move them. Maybe move ourselves. Back to Baltimore where Grandma Diane lives. Because of my father's wife. Kennedy shouldn't have been surprised that Claudia understood. Partially. There are business competitors involved too. But yes, the situation with your father's family has created complications. I don't want to move. I like my school, my friends. I know, baby, but sometimes we have to do hard things to protect what we've built. Claudia was quiet for a moment. If we move, do I have to see him, my father? Only if you want to. That's always your choice. I don't want to. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Claudia looked up with fierce determination. But I don't want to lose our boats either, so if we have to move, we'll move. We're survivors, right, Mama? We're survivors, Kennedy agreed, pulling her daughter close. David called the next morning with a name, Sterling Maritime Development in Baltimore's Inner Harbor. The owner had space for her entire fleet at rates that were actually reasonable. Kennedy flew to Baltimore that afternoon, met with the owner, negotiated a favorable lease, and returned to Newport with a plan. The yacht relocation would be complex and expensive. She'd lose some clients who weren't willing to travel to Baltimore. Her revenue would take a hit. But she'd survive. She always did. The first yacht was scheduled to move in 2 weeks. Kennedy was in her office finalizing logistics when her assistant announced a visitor. Grayson Mitchell stood in her doorway, flowers in hand, looking concerned. I heard about everything, the lawsuit, the marina situation, the relocation. He set the flowers down, took her hands. Kennedy, why didn't you call me? I would have helped. I didn't want to burden you with my problems. Your problems are my problems. That's what being engaged means. Grayson paused. Except we're not really engaged, are we? You've been wearing my ring, but you still haven't actually said yes. Kennedy pulled her hands back. Grayson, it's him, isn't it? David showing up even briefly reminded you what you're still holding on to. No, it reminded me that I don't love you the way you deserve to be loved. Kennedy met his eyes. I care about you. I respect you. But I don't love you, Grayson. And marrying you would be settling. For both of us. Grayson was quiet for a long moment. I hoped that maybe, with time, you'd learn to love me. You deserve someone who already does, who doesn't need to learn, who feels about you the way I once felt about David before everything fell apart. You still feel that way about him, you just won't admit it. Kennedy couldn't deny it, so she said nothing. Grayson kissed her forehead. I hope you find your way to happiness, Kennedy. You deserve it more than anyone I know. He left, and Kennedy was alone again with her empire and her daughter and the ghost of a man she couldn't stop loving despite everything he'd done. The yacht relocation took 3 weeks. Her crews were professional, the weather cooperated, and the Baltimore marina exceeded expectations. By the end of the month, all 16 yachts were relocated. Kennedy had moved her operations headquarters, and Claudia had started at a new school. They moved in with Diane temporarily while Kennedy searched for a house. Her mother welcomed them with quiet understanding and fierce support. "You're doing it again," Diane said one night over tea. "Building from ashes, making something stronger." "I'm tired, Mama, so tired of fighting." "I know, baby, but fighting is what you do. It's who you are." David texted weekly, updates about therapy he was attending, information about the divorce proceedings, questions about when he could see Claudia. Kennedy mostly didn't respond, but she also didn't block his number. And when Claudia's 9th birthday approached and her daughter asked, "Can we invite him, just to see if he shows up?" Kennedy said yes, because some risks were worth taking, even if they terrified you. Chapter 7. The siege continues. David showed up to Claudia's birthday party with a present and visible terror in his eyes. The party was at Diane's apartment, small, just family, and a few school friends. Kennedy watched from the kitchen as her daughter answered the door, looked up at David, and said simply, "You came." "I wouldn't miss it," David said. "Happy birthday, Claudia." She took the present without thanking him, set it with the others, and went back to her friends. David stood in the doorway looking lost until Diane took pity on him. "You must be David. I'm Diane, Kennedy's mother." She didn't offer her hand. "You can come in, but hurt my granddaughter, and I'll make you regret it." "Understood," David said quietly. Kennedy watched him navigate the party, awkward attempts to talk to Claudia that she mostly ignored, stilted conversations with other parents, his complete inability to relax. When Claudia opened his gift, a leather sketchbook with her name embossed in gold and his drawing of their first yacht, the Diane, on the opening page, she studied it for a long moment before setting it aside without comment. The indifference was somehow more devastating than anger would have been. After the party, after Claudia went to bed, David helped Kennedy clean up. They worked in silence until Diane announced she was going to bed and left them alone. "She hates me," David said quietly, drying a dish. "She doesn't know you well enough to hate you." "Which is worse?" "Yes, it is." Kennedy set down the dish towel. "David, what do you want? Really want?" "To be her father, to know her, to be part of her life. That requires consistency, showing up, being present even when it's hard or inconvenient. Can you do that?" "I've been in therapy for 3 months. Dr. Lauren Hassan every Tuesday. I can give you her number to verify." "I already have it. I called her 2 weeks ago." David's head snapped up. "You checked on me?" "Of course I did. You think I'd let you near Claudia without verifying you're doing the work?" Kennedy crossed her arms. "Dr. Hassan says you're making progress, but have a long way to go. She says your commitment seems genuine, but time will tell." "It is genuine. Kennedy, I've spent 8 years becoming someone I despise. I need to be better for Claudia, for myself." "What about Jaylin? The divorce?" "Final in 2 weeks. She's taking everything. The house, most of my savings, half my partnership stake. I'm moving into a studio apartment in Baltimore." David laughed without humor. "Turns out all that success was built on her family's money and connections. Without her, I'm just an architect starting over." "Good. Now you know what it feels like to build something alone. I do, and it's hell, but I'm not asking for sympathy. I'm asking for a chance, with Claudia, to prove I can be the father she deserves. Kennedy studied him for a long moment. Monthly visits, supervised by me. If you miss one, you're done. If you're late, you're done. If you make her cry, you're done. Those are the terms. I'll take them. Thank you, Kennedy. I won't let you down. You already have. Multiple times. Now you get to prove you've changed. Over the following months, David showed up. For every scheduled visit, for aquarium trips and museum outings. He'd arrive early, never left until the scheduled time was up, and slowly, painfully slowly, Claudia began to warm to him. He's different than I expected, Claudia said after a visit to the Science Museum. Quieter, sadder. People change sometimes. Did you change, Mama? I got stronger. I'm not sure if that's change or just becoming more of who I always was. Kennedy found a house in Baltimore, nothing ostentatious but comfortable. It had a small guest cottage in the back that sat empty. Claudia asked about it one day. Why don't we rent out the cottage, make extra money? We don't need extra money, baby. Then why have it empty? Good question. Kennedy didn't have a good answer that didn't involve the complicated feeling she was developing about David's consistent presence in their lives. Then the final assault came from Ryland Cross. Kennedy was in her office when her lawyer Patricia called with devastating news. Cross has filed a claim. He's saying the Sterling Duchess has an outstanding lien from a previous owner, a lien he purchased. If enforced, he gets legal ownership of your flagship yacht. That's impossible. We cleared all liens during purchase. There was one missed in the previous owner's bankruptcy proceedings. It's obscure, buried in maritime law, but Cross found it. The lien is for $800,000. Kennedy felt her empire teetering. I don't have that liquid, not without selling other yachts or taking on debt that could sink the company. I know, which is exactly what Cross wants. Pay the lien and cripple yourself financially, or lose your flagship and destroy your brand. Kennedy hung up and sat in her office, staring at the photograph of Claudia on her desk, and felt the weight of 8 years of building threaten to collapse. Her phone rang. David. I heard about the lien. Kennedy, I have money. Not a lot after the divorce, but I liquidated my retirement accounts. $850,000. It's yours if you need it. Kennedy couldn't speak. I know it's not enough to fix everything, David continued, but it'll clear the lien, save the Sterling Duchess, keep your fleet intact. David, that's your entire financial security. I don't care. You saved yourself once after I destroyed you. Let me help save you this time. Why? Because you're the mother of my daughter. Because watching you lose everything would destroy me. Because I'd rather be broke knowing you're okay than comfortable watching your empire fall. His voice cracked. Because I love you, Kennedy. I never stopped. The words hit like a physical blow. I can't accept this. Yes, you can, please. Let me do something right. Let me be the man I should have been 8 years ago. Kennedy closed her eyes, tears falling. Send the wire transfer details. I'll have my lawyer coordinate. Kennedy, don't thank me. This doesn't change anything between us. It's a business transaction. But they both knew it was more than that. The money cleared within hours. Kennedy paid the lien, saved her yacht, kept her empire intact. And David had nothing left but a studio apartment and the knowledge that he'd helped instead of hurt for the first time in 8 years. 3 days later, David showed up at Kennedy's office unannounced. Your lease is expiring, Kennedy said without preamble. The studio in Baltimore. How did you know that? I have resources, I use them. Kennedy slid a key across her desk. The guest cottage behind my house, it's empty, rent-free for 6 months while you rebuild your finances. David stared at the key like it was a bomb. Kennedy, I can't. It's practical. Claudia wants you nearby. You're broke because you saved my business, and I have extra space I'm not using. Kennedy met his eyes. This doesn't mean anything. It's not forgiveness. It's not a relationship. It's just being practical. If you're sure, I'm not, but I'm doing it anyway. David took the key with shaking hands. Thank you. I'll follow your rules. Won't impose. We'll be there for Claudia, but respect your space. See that you do. He moved in the following weekend. Kennedy watched from her kitchen window as he unpacked his entire life from a single car and felt something shift in her chest. Not forgiveness, not trust, but maybe the first crack in the armor she'd built around her heart. That night, Kennedy found David on the cottage porch, staring at her house where light glowed in Claudia's window. "You okay?" she asked. David looked up, surprised. "I never expected to live this close to her. To you. It feels like something I don't deserve." "You don't. But Claudia asked for it. And what she wants matters more than what either of us thinks you deserve." "Fair enough." David stood. "I have rules for myself. Won't come to the main house uninvited. Won't impose. Just here if Claudia needs me." Good. Because those were going to be my rules too. They stood in the darkness between the cottage and house, and Kennedy felt the weight of possibility settling between them. This could go terribly wrong, could blow up in her face, could hurt Claudia if David failed again, but it could also be the beginning of something new, something earned instead of given, something built from ashes instead of inherited from the past. Kennedy went back to her house, locked the door, and tried to convince herself she was still in control of this situation. She wasn't. But she wasn't ready to admit that yet. Chapter 8. The Seismic Shift. They fell into an unexpected rhythm. David would have breakfast with Claudia some mornings before school. Kennedy would find them discussing architecture or marine biology. Claudia animated in ways that made Kennedy's chest ache. He never stayed long, never pushed for more than Claudia offered. 3 months after David moved into the cottage, Claudia's school hosted a science fair. Claudia had built a model of a yacht propulsion system, complete with working rudder and motor. "Will you both come?" she asked at dinner one night. "Mama and Dad, together?" The word Dad made David freeze mid-bite. Kennedy's hands tightened on her fork. "Of course we'll both come," Kennedy said, keeping her voice light. "Wouldn't miss it." The science fair was crowded with proud parents and elaborate projects. Kennedy and David flanked Claudia's booth, watching her explain her design to judges and other parents with confidence that bordered on brilliance. "She's extraordinary," David whispered to Kennedy. "You raised an extraordinary human. We're a team, she and I. I can see that." David looked at Claudia with naked longing. "Do you think there's room for me on that team someday?" "That's not my decision. It's hers." After the fair, Claudia wanted ice cream. They went to her favorite place, crammed into a booth, and Kennedy felt something dangerous, contentment. This felt like family, like what they should have been 8 years ago, and that feeling terrified her more than any business crisis ever had. November brought the first real test. Claudia got sick with pneumonia. Kennedy rushed her to the hospital, hands shaking as she filled out admission forms for emergency surgery to drain fluid from her daughter's lungs. The school called David. He'd made himself an emergency contact months ago with Kennedy's permission. He arrived at the hospital 20 minutes after Kennedy, burst into the waiting room and found her sitting alone, crying quietly. "How is she?" David asked, sitting beside her. "In surgery. They said it's routine, but..." Kennedy's voice broke. "She's my whole world, David. If something happens to her..." "Nothing's going to happen. She's strong, like her mother." David took Kennedy's hand without thinking. "We're going to get through this." Kennedy didn't pull away, because in that moment she needed someone to be strong when she couldn't be. They waited together. Hours that felt like days. When the surgeon finally emerged, "She's fine, clean break, no complications," they both sobbed with relief. Claudia was groggy when they were allowed into recovery. "Mama," she slurred, reaching for Kennedy. "I'm here, baby. You're all fixed, good as new. Dad? Claudia looked around until she found David. You came too? Of course I did. I'll always come when you need me. Both of you came. Together. Claudia smiled dopily from the anesthesia. Like a real family. Kennedy and David looked at each other over their daughter's hospital bed, and Kennedy saw her own longing reflected in his eyes. Dangerous. This was dangerous. That night, after Claudia was discharged and sleeping peacefully at home, David walked Kennedy to her bedroom door. Thank you for letting me be there today, he said, for including me. You're her father. You should be there. Kennedy. David took her hand. I need to tell you something. I've been holding it in for months, but after today, I can't anymore. David, don't. I love you. I'm completely in love with you still. I know I don't deserve another chance. I know I destroyed what we had. But Kennedy, if there's any possibility, any chance at all. Kennedy kissed him. She didn't plan it, just stood on her toes and pressed her lips to his and felt 8 years of walls crumble. David kissed her back with desperation, hands cupping her face, and Kennedy let herself fall into it, into him, into the terrifying possibility that maybe broken things could be repaired. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Kennedy said, I'm terrified. So am I. You hurt me so badly. I don't know if I can trust you again. I know, but I swear I'll spend the rest of my life earning that trust, every single day. David pressed his forehead to hers. I'm not the same man who left you, and you're not the same woman I left. We're both stronger now, both clearer about what matters. We go slow, Kennedy said. We don't tell Claudia yet. We figure out if this is real. Okay, whatever you need. And David? If you hurt me again, if you hurt Claudia again, I will destroy you. I have resources now. I'm not afraid to use them. I know, and you should, because if I hurt either of you again, I'll deserve it. They stood in the hallway, hands clasped, and made a silent pact to try. Over the following months, they dated, secretly at first, late-night conversations on Kennedy's porch after Claudia went to bed, stolen kisses in the space between the cottage and house, dinners at restaurants far enough from Baltimore that they wouldn't be recognized. Kennedy fell slowly, carefully, testing each step like she was crossing a frozen lake that might crack beneath her weight. David was patient, consistent, showed up every single day, proved through actions, not words, that he'd changed. 4 months after that first kiss, Claudia cornered Kennedy in the kitchen. Mama, I need to ask you something. What's up, baby? Are you and Dad dating? Kennedy's heart stopped. What makes you think that? I'm not blind. You look at each other like the gross couple in that movie Grandma Diane likes, the one with all the kissing. Kennedy couldn't help but laugh. When did you get so observant? I've always been observant. You just didn't notice because you were busy building an empire. Claudia's voice was matter-of-fact. So are you. Would that be okay with you if we were? Claudia thought about it seriously. I don't know, he left us before. What if he does it again? That's my fear too, baby. But people can change. Your father has been showing up consistently for over a year now. He's doing the work. But can you trust him? Kennedy sat down at eye level with her daughter. I don't know yet, but I'm willing to try, if you're okay with it. Claudia was quiet for a long moment. I want a family, like a real one. But I also don't want you to get hurt again. Baby, I might get hurt. That's the risk of loving someone. But I think it might be worth it. Okay. But Mama, if he hurts us again, can we feed him to sharks? Kennedy laughed through sudden tears. Absolutely. We'll chum the waters ourselves. They told David that evening that the secret was out. He cried, held them both, and promised he'd never give them reason to doubt him again. Kennedy wanted to believe him, was choosing to believe him, But she also knew that trust was a garden that needed constant tending. One mistake, one moment of taking them for granted, and everything could die. But that night, with David's arms around her and Claudia sleeping peacefully down the hall, Kennedy let herself hope. For the first time in 8 years, she let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, happy endings were possible for people who'd lived through hell. Chapter 9. The Peak. 6 months into their relationship, David's mother, Ruth, showed up unannounced at Kennedy's door. Kennedy hadn't seen Ruth in 9 years. The last time had been at that awards gala when everything was perfect and nothing had fallen apart yet. "Mrs. Lyon," Kennedy said, surprised. "I didn't know you were in Baltimore." "I came to meet my granddaughter and to apologize to you." Ruth's voice was steady, but her eyes were red. "May I come in?" Kennedy let her inside. Claudia was at school. David was at his new architecture job downtown. He'd been rebuilding his career from the ground up for the past year. "I owe you an apology, 8 years overdue," Ruth said, sitting in Kennedy's living room. "When David got the Hawthorne offer, I told him to take it. I pushed him. I thought Jalen's family connections would secure his future. I was wrong about everything." "You didn't force him to leave us." "No, but I made it easier for him to justify it. I told him he was being practical. That family could wait while he built his career." Ruth's hands shook. "I helped destroy your family, Kennedy, and I've never met my granddaughter because of choices I supported." Kennedy studied the older woman, saw genuine remorse, saw the weight of regret. "Claudia doesn't know you, doesn't know she has a grandmother on David's side." "I know. I want to change that if you'll let me. Not to intrude, not to demand anything. Just to be present, to be family." Kennedy made tea and they talked. About David's childhood, about Ruth's own regrets, about Claudia and the extraordinary child Kennedy had raised alone. When Claudia came home from school, Kennedy introduced her to Ruth carefully. "Baby, this is Ruth, your father's mother, your grandmother." Claudia studied Ruth with those serious eyes. "You're why my dad left us." Ruth flinched but didn't look away. "I encouraged him to make choices that hurt your mother, and hurt you. I'm deeply sorry." "Sorry doesn't fix things," Claudia said, echoing words she'd heard Kennedy say. "No, it doesn't. But maybe showing up does, if you'll let me." Claudia looked at Kennedy. Kennedy nodded. Claudia turned back to Ruth. "Okay, but you have to earn it, like Dad is earning it." "I will, I promise." Ruth became a careful presence in their lives. Sunday dinners, school events, slowly earning Claudia's trust the way David had. Spring brought David's proposal, not dramatic, not public, just the two of them on Kennedy's porch after Claudia had gone to bed. "I know I don't deserve you," David said, pulling out a simple ring, not expensive because he was still rebuilding financially, but thoughtfully designed. "But I'm asking anyway. Kennedy Fox, will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life proving I'm worthy of you and our daughter?" Kennedy looked at the ring, looked at David, and felt all her carefully constructed armor finally fall away. "You hurt me so badly. I know. I don't know if I'll ever fully trust you again. I'll earn it back, however long it takes. This isn't a fairy tale. We'll have hard days. Days I resent you for the years you weren't here. Days you have to prove yourself all over again. I'll show up for all of them." Kennedy took the ring, slipped it on her finger. "Yes. God help me, yes." They told Claudia the next morning. She looked at the ring, looked at them, and said, "Finally. I thought I'd have to lock you in a room together." The wedding was planned for early summer. Small ceremony on the Phoenix, Kennedy's newest yacht, the one David had helped design, just family and close friends. But 3 weeks before the wedding, the final crisis hit. Jalen appeared at Kennedy's office, sober, thinner than Kennedy remembered, without the designer armor she'd worn on the yacht. "I need to talk to you," Jalen said. "Please, just 5 minutes." Kennedy almost refused, but something in Jalen's face made her pause. "You have 3 minutes." Jalen sat across from Kennedy's desk, hands twisting in her lap. "I came to apologize, and to warn you." "Warn me about what?" "Ryland Cross isn't done. The lien thing was just the beginning. He's planning something bigger. I don't know what, but I overheard him talking to his lawyers. Something about intellectual property theft, claiming your yacht designs are stolen from his patents." "That's insane. All my designs are original, I know. But he doesn't care about truth. He cares about burying you." Jalen met Kennedy's eyes. "I'm telling you because I owe you that. I destroyed your relationship with David. I manipulated him, trapped him, made both your lives hell, and I'm sorry." Kennedy studied her. "Why now? Why apologize after all these years?" "Because I'm in therapy, because I'm trying to be better, because seeing you on that yacht, seeing what you'd built, how strong you were, made me realize I've never built anything. I've just destroyed things and called it success." Jalen stood. "I don't expect forgiveness. Just wanted you to know about Cross and to say I'm sorry." After Jalen left, Kennedy immediately called her lawyers, warned them about Cross's potential move. Her legal team started preemptive work, documenting the originality of every yacht design, preparing for the attack they knew was coming. It came 2 weeks before the wedding. Cross filed a massive lawsuit claiming Kennedy had stolen proprietary design elements from his yachts. The amount, $20 million. The timing, clearly designed to force Kennedy to settle or postpone her wedding to deal with legal crisis. "He's trying to break me right before I marry David," Kennedy told Patricia on the phone, "trying to prove I can't handle the pressure." "Can you? Watch me." Kennedy worked 18-hour days preparing the defense. David stood beside her, helping with architectural documentation, providing expert testimony about design origins. Ruth watched Claudia when they needed to work late. The whole family mobilized. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for 2 days before the wedding. Kennedy walked into that courtroom in a power suit, backed by airtight documentation, represented by lawyers who didn't lose. The judge took one look at Cross's claims, at Kennedy's evidence, and dismissed the case with prejudice. "Mr. Cross, this is frivolous litigation clearly designed to harass the defendant. Your claims have no merit. Case dismissed. And I'm awarding attorney's fees to Ms. Fox." Kennedy walked out of that courthouse victorious. David was waiting outside, swept her into his arms, and she let herself cry with relief. "You did it," he whispered. "You saved everything again." "We did it," Kennedy corrected. "As a team." The wedding happened as scheduled. Small ceremony on the Phoenix with Baltimore Harbor as backdrop. Claudia was maid of honor, wearing ocean blue and beaming. Diane officiated, her voice strong as she spoke about love that survives fire, about forgiveness that's earned drop by drop, about families built from ashes. Kennedy's vows, "David, you broke me once, shattered me so completely I thought I'd never be whole. But I learned I didn't need you to be complete. I built my own empire, raised our daughter, became strong enough to stand alone, which is why I can marry you now. Not because I need you, but because I choose you, because you earned your way back. I love you, and I trust you, and that's not something I give lightly." David's vows. "Kennedy, I can't undo the past, can't give you back the years I stole, but I can give you every day forward. I can promise to choose you, choose Claudia, choose us over everything else. You're my conscience, my compass, my home, and I will never lose sight of that again." They kissed as husband and wife, and Claudia cheered louder than anyone. The reception was perfect. Good food, better company, dancing under stars on a yacht Kennedy had built. Late in the evening, Kennedy found herself watching David dance with Claudia, both laughing, and felt her mother's hand on her shoulder. "You did good, baby girl," Diane said. "Built an empire and got your family back. He had to earn it. And he did. That's what matters." Kennedy watched her daughter, watched her husband, and felt peace she hadn't known in 8 years. Not perfect peace, not without scars, but peace nonetheless. And that was enough. Chapter 10. The Empire They Forged. 18 months after the wedding, Kennedy stood on the deck of the Phoenix for a press conference that would reshape her company. Fox Luxury Charters had grown to 22 yachts. Revenue had doubled. They were the premier charter operation on the East Coast, with a reputation for excellence that even Ryland Cross couldn't damage. But today's announcement was different. Claudia stood beside Kennedy in a navy dress, now 11 years old and poised beyond her years. David stood on her other side, and between Kennedy and David, twin boys, Luke and Hayes, 6 months old, passed between parents like precious cargo. The press filled the harbor. Bloomberg, Forbes, Vanity Fair. Kennedy could see the curiosity in their faces, the questions already forming about why the maritime queen had called this conference. Kennedy took the microphone, feeling the weight of the moment. Thank you for being here. Today I'm announcing that Fox Luxury Charters is becoming Fox & Lion Maritime Group. I'm bringing on a partner, David Lyon, as Chief Design Officer. He'll lead our new division creating custom yacht interiors and architectural consulting for maritime projects. The press erupted with questions, cameras flashing, reporters shouting over each other. Kennedy held up a hand, waited for quiet. I know what you're thinking. David and I have a complicated history. We were partners once before, in life and business. He left. He made choices that destroyed our family. Those are facts I won't sugarcoat. Kennedy's voice was steady, powerful. But he's spent 2 years proving he's changed, proving he's committed to our family and capable of being a true partner. This company was built from nothing by a woman who refused to quit. This partnership is being built from trust that was earned, not given. That's the difference. A reporter called out, "Ms. Fox, aren't you worried about mixing business with personal relationships again?" "Every day," Kennedy said honestly. "But I've learned something building this empire. The biggest risks often yield the biggest rewards. And I'm not the woman I was 8 years ago. I'm stronger, smarter, and I know my worth. David is joining Fox & Lion because he's earned it, not because I'm giving him a second chance, because he took it himself, one day at a time." David took the microphone, and Kennedy saw his hands tremble slightly. "I don't deserve this opportunity. I threw away a kingdom once because I was too blind to see what I had. But Kennedy's giving me a chance anyway, and I will spend every day earning it. Not just through yacht designs or business deals, but by showing up, by being present, by being the partner and father I should have been from the beginning." He looked at Claudia. "My daughter is watching. She's learning what it means to rebuild from mistakes, to earn trust, to be accountable. I hope I can teach her those lessons by living them, not just speaking them." The press loved it. The story had everything: redemption, romance, business empire, family reunion. Kennedy knew the headlines would be spectacular, but standing there with her family, she realized she didn't care about the headlines. She cared about the reality they'd built together. After the press conference, after the champagne toasts and business meetings, Kennedy found herself alone on the upper deck of the Phoenix. The harbor glittered in the afternoon sun, her fleet of yachts bobbing gently in their slips, visible proof of what she'd built from nothing. "You're thinking too hard," David said, appearing beside her. "I can see it in your face. Just remembering. That first yacht I bought at auction, the Diane, everyone thought I was crazy. You were. But the best kind of crazy, the kind that changes everything." Kennedy leaned against the railing, felt David's warmth beside her. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if you'd never left? If we'd built this together from the beginning?" "Every day. But then I realized we wouldn't be who we are now. You wouldn't be this fierce, unstoppable force. I wouldn't understand what it means to lose everything and fight to get it back." David turned to her. "We're better now, stronger. This version of us is built on honesty and work and earned trust. The old version was built on assumption and comfort. That wouldn't have survived. You think we'll survive now? I think we'll fight for it. Every day. That's the difference. Claudia appeared, interrupting the moment. Mama, Dad, photographers want a family picture. All of us together. Family. They were a family now, built from wreckage, earned through consistency, real because they'd fought for it. They posed on the deck, Kennedy and David in the middle, Claudia between them, each parent holding a twin. Luke grabbed David's tie, Hayes drooled on Kennedy's suit jacket, and Claudia laughed at the chaos of it all. When the photographer said, "Smile like you love each other," they didn't have to pretend. That evening, after the twins were asleep and Claudia was in her room reading, Kennedy and David sat on their back porch. The cottage where David had lived for those first tentative months stood empty now, waiting for Ruth to move in next month. She'd decided to relocate to Baltimore to be closer to her grandchildren. "Your mother called," Kennedy said. "She's nervous about the move, worried she'll be imposing." "Tell her imposing is showing up uninvited 8 years ago. Showing up now after earning her place is just being family." Kennedy smiled. "I'll tell her. She's good with the twins. Claudia adores her. Because you let her earn it. You could have shut her out, but you gave her the same chance you gave me, to prove she'd changed. People deserve chances to be better, as long as they're willing to do the work." They sat in comfortable silence, and Kennedy marveled at how far they'd come, from that devastating night when she'd walked out with a baby and a broken heart to this moment of hard-won peace. "What are you thinking about?" David asked. "That yacht charter, when you showed up with Jalen for her birthday. I was so angry, so hurt, but also," Kennedy paused, "also awake for the first time in years. Seeing you made me realize I'd been just surviving, not living. Even with all my success, part of me was frozen in that moment you left. And now I'm living, building, loving, still scared sometimes, but choosing to do it anyway." David took her hand. "I'm scared too. Scared I'll mess this up. Scared I'll disappoint you and Claudia. Scared I'll wake up one day and you'll realize you don't need me." "I don't need you," Kennedy said, and watched David flinch. "I choose you. There's a difference. I needed you 8 years ago, and when you left, it destroyed me. Now I'm whole on my own, strong on my own, but I choose to share that strength with you. That's better than need. That's partnership." 3 years later, Fox and Lion Maritime Group was valued at over $100 million. They'd expanded to Miami, opened an office in the Caribbean, had a waiting list that stretched into the following year. Claudia was 14, already interning with the company during summers, learning design from David and business operations from Kennedy. She talked about taking over someday, building on what her parents had forged. "You two showed me something important," Claudia said one evening at family dinner. The twins were making chaos with their food, Ruth was helping referee, and the house felt wonderfully, messily alive. "You showed me that empires aren't just built from success. They're built from failure, from getting knocked down and getting back up, from choosing to trust even when you're scared." Kennedy looked at David across the table, saw him watching their children with something like wonder, and felt gratitude for the long road that had led here. That night, after the twins were finally asleep and Claudia had gone to bed, after Ruth had retired to the cottage and the house was quiet, Kennedy found David in his home office working on yacht designs. "Come to bed," she said from the doorway. "Just finishing this. David, come to bed." He looked up, saw something in her face, and immediately saved his work and stood. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. Everything's right. And I want to fall asleep next to my husband instead of waiting for him to finish work." Kennedy smiled. "I spent too many years falling asleep alone. I don't want to waste the nights I have with you here." David crossed to her, pulled her close. "I'm sorry. You're right. Work can wait. I'm not angry. I just know what matters now. And it's not the work. It's this, us, the family we built." They went to bed together, and Kennedy lay in the darkness listening to David breathe beside her, feeling his warmth, and thought about the journey that had brought them here. It hadn't been easy. Some days still weren't easy. There were moments when old wounds ached, when she remembered the pain of being abandoned, when she questioned whether trust could ever be fully restored. But then there were moments like this, quiet moments, real moments, moments that proved love could survive almost anything if both people were willing to fight for it. Kennedy had built an empire from nothing, had raised an extraordinary daughter alone, had survived betrayal and heartbreak and financial warfare and come out stronger. But this family, this partnership, this hard-won peace, this was her greatest achievement, not because David completed her, but because she'd chosen to let him back into a life that was already complete, because she'd risked her rebuilt heart on the man who'd broken it, and he'd proven worthy of that risk. Because some stories don't end when they fall apart. Some stories are just beginning when everything seems lost, and the empires built from ashes, the families forged in fire, the love that survives betrayal and time and every reason to quit, those are the ones that never burn again. Kennedy fell asleep with David's arm around her, the sound of her children sleeping down the hall, and the certainty that she'd built something that would last. Not perfect, not without scars, but real, earned, hers. And that was worth more than any fortune, any yacht, any empire built on easier ground. She'd survived the fall, built herself back up, and chosen to risk falling again with eyes wide open. That wasn't weakness. That was the strongest thing she'd ever done. And as she drifted into sleep, Kennedy smiled, because she knew, no matter what tomorrow brought, they'd face it together. As partners, as equals, as a family forged from the ashes of what they'd lost. Forever.